Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram at Goodtaste TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Good Taste for the Soul. I'm Tanji Patton. Fascinating guest for you today. His name is Bazzel Baz. You may know him from the NBC show The Blacklist. He was one of the actors on that. But it's his distinguished military career and his calling to rescue God's children right now that really stand out. Bazzel literally travels all over the world to rescue trafficked kids. It's a job that not many people are doing. Child trafficking is real. It's not shrinking. It's not going away. In fact, if anything, it's getting worse. There are hundreds of thousands of missing children right here in this country. It's a horrible, horrible statistic. So we're going to talk to Bazzel about the work he does, why he does it. Keep in mind, this is a man that has been on the front lines of many incredibly dangerous world events, as well as deep behind the scenes of many of the world stage events. He has an incredible life story. So I hope you enjoy the discussion as much as I did. Here's Bazzel. So a huge welcome to Good Taste for the Soul. And for those who don't know you, the name Bazzel Baz, it's not a common name, but you have a fascinating resume and it cuts across a lot of different industry lines. So give folks a little taste of your resume, and thank you for your service, by the way, because it looms large in this.
You are welcome. Thank you for offering the opportunity. Kind of put it in a nutshell, I'm a Citadel graduate. I'm a former captain in the Marine Corps. I was one of the first counterterrorism officers for the Marine Corps after we got hit in Beirut. Way back, most people that are probably a lot younger than us wouldn't remember the bombing of the barracks there. But and then from there, I went on to be recruited by Special Operations Group, Ground Branch for the CIA. Worked both Ground Branch and Maritime for another 10 years in the clandestine service, mostly doing paramilitary case officer work. So I think that was kind of a fitting journey for me, since my father, who was a Special Forces Green Beret, had worked for the agency in Vietnam, and I come from just a long line of warfighters that date all the way back to 1060 in Fort Buford, Lebanon, during the Crusades. So, you grow up, you learn the stories, you hear the stories, and you do your own research. And when all of a sudden there's this huge wow factor when you go, my goodness, no wonder I do what I do now. It's kind of in your blood, so to speak. Yeah. After, in 1993, I was one of the first couple of teams, CIA teams, into Mogadishu, Somalia. Most people remember that from an incident called Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
This was during that time on the ground that myself and some center spike guys that were attached to us rescued a couple little girls and got them to safety. They weren't indigenous. I think, well, their father, I think, as if I have the story correct, their father was from Italy, and I think he had two families, one in Italy and maybe one in Mogadishu. And when the Civil War got started, I think it looks like he just kind of bolted. So anyway, we got them to safety, and when I got back to the United States, it was actually the first time in my life that I ever even asked what was happening to children. So I started asking around for both local, state, and federal law enforcement associates. They said, do we have missing kids in America? And they said, yeah, we got about 250,000 to date.
Which that number alone is astounding.
Yeah,
Missing.
it is. Yeah, it sure is. So I asked them, I said, well, what does that mean? And they just went, well, it means they're missing. Most of them we count them as runaways. So that didn't sit well with me. And so I started doing research and found out there were things like child pornography, organ harvesting, sex trafficking, and the list went on. But it was buried, not necessarily under the radar because people were trying to hide it, as much as it is because the bureaucratic structure didn't allow law enforcement to be trained up on it and actually go from state to state. They had communication challenges, they had budgetary constraints, and the list goes on and on and on. So in the words of a very close friend at that time, he's retired from the FBI now, he said, look, it's just not a priority. He said, terrorism's a priority, blue collar crime, and all this other stuff. I just named everything you could think of except for rescuing children. So, you know, having a good understanding of why we raise our children to have a better life than ourselves became really clear to me early on, because they are the future of our country. So we're really dealing with the national security issue here. If you don't have a country, and you don't want to have a country of patriots, have people that support the Constitution and care for the founding fathers, then you just kind of get rid of all the children that
Yeah,
are one day supposed to be
exactly.
adults and do all the things we do. So I was raised in a family that sacrificed everything they could so that I'd have a better life. And I think we were just at a time in America, and we kind of still are, Tanji, where people don't care enough about children. It's not a priority. So they care more about themselves. So as I mentioned earlier, I'd love to be able to tell the audience that we're winning this war on child sex trafficking, but it's not the case. We are
Well,
not winning the war. It has grown
yeah,
exponentially in our country.
well, it has, and we'll get into that too, the effect of the open border and what that's done for the cartels and others. I wanted to give our audience a little bit of a background on how you and I connected and why. Um, child trafficking is such an ugly topic, right? It's not something people really want to talk about. They don't want to see it. It's an ugly topic and on all levels. The worst heinous crime, I think, that exists, a crime against a child. So we did an interview here about a little over a month ago with a couple who had this horrible thing happen to their daughter. And this was a situation where a girl goes off to college her first year, a date rape situation early on in her college experience, and it really wrecked her mentally. The police just filed it as a he said, she said, even though there were eyewitnesses. Um, Administratively, it kind of went away, but it didn't go away for her. The pain she internalized as she turned to drinking, she turned to drugs. She got in with the bad crowd, or maybe the bad crowd, found her. In any event, she ended up being trafficked. And they told their story. And if anyone listened to that interview, the horrific things they went through are nothing short of a nightmare. And the things they were able to talk about in the interview are maybe that much compared to what really happened in their life and to their family. It was a horrific thing. So became interested in the topic of child trafficking. Again, I feel like it's a calling of some sort. I don't believe in coincidences, and this topic just keeps coming in front of my radar. And working on another story, I was doing a little investigative work and ran across a law enforcement individual. I was directed to him as someone who might be helpful um, in the realm of child trafficking. So I reached out to him and told him I was looking to find out locally if he could share some information on what's going on. And I know, parents perhaps need more information on how real this could be in their community. And one of the other topics that came up was the big sporting events. And one is coming to Houston pretty quickly. So, in any event, in the course of that conversation, he downplayed, um, not that it's a horrible crime, but he said the reality that most parents have more to worry about than this. And he's local law enforcement. I know they don't have a lot of resources and whatnot. So I was kind of taken aback a little bit by it. And I thought, well, maybe. And to Cash's credit, it was Cash that said, "Hey, no, wait a minute. You need to talk to this guy." And he put me in touch with you because this is a real problem, isn't it? And it is something that's not going away, and it's not shrinking.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. So
Yeah.
a couple things. Let me just address, particularly for parents that their children do unfortunately get trafficked. That child is not the same child that left your home. So we see this mistake because often we'll rescue a child and anyone under 18, and the parents, instead of allowing that kid to go to rehab or aftercare, where there's trauma-informed care and professionals, they want to bring them home. And I understand that, thinking that the love of their family as it used to be is enough to change things, and it's not. And we see it fail probably 98% of the time. And kids go back and they're trafficked again, because now you're looking at a son or a daughter who's been sexually abused. They've been given drugs. They've been introduced to a darkness that just penetrates their soul. It literally rips their soul out, to be honest with you. So you'll hear us often say, how do you murder a child without killing them? And the answer is you sexually, abuse them, because they will continue to die on a physiological level as well as the mental and spiritual level for the rest of their lives. So it isn't true. It is one of the most heinous crimes that can be committed against mankind and children, which is why we advocate for the death penalty, to be honest with you. We have absolutely no tolerance for that. You rape a child, you deserve the death penalty. You've lost all your privileges as a human being on this earth. And in my professional and my personal opinion, I think this is why God said it's better than a millstone be put around a man's neck and him thrown in the ocean and drowned and die than to ever harm one of these little ones. That's the first thing that people need to be aware of. And it's interesting also, Tanji, is that, and I think a lot of our aftercare providers are missing the boat on something that they're just not equipped to understand. And that is, trauma damages your DNA and your cells. So if most of the audience out there that's had an aftercare, if you'll just listen to this for a moment, I know you're experiencing the same thing. You rescue I'm just using this as an example, you rescue the 14-year-old, but from 14 to 28, they're always in the hospital with something's going wrong with their body constantly, over and over and over, or they're back to drugs, or there's something. And one of the reasons is, once they've been sexually abused, their body, the switch that gets turned on is that you need to die, because that's what's happening to them every single day. They're almost dying every single day, and some do die. So what happens is that switch gets turned on, and physiologically, they just die, and they continue to die, and their body starts to shut down. Their organs start to shut down. And I know this because I did a tremendous amount of research with Dr. Brian Thompson, who now is helping with a product called Regenerate, which isn't stem cells, but it's the memory of stem cells that they can apply to children or trauma victims that will turn their body back on, turn that switch back on, so their DNA says, I need to live. And now that signal is being sent down to the body, to their heart, their organs. And it's just a major breakthrough that we and God allowed us to see over the course of literally the last 3 months. So I would say that,
Wow.
it's not enough to give them a blanket. It's not enough to give them food.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough to read the Bible to them. It's not enough to all these things. And not that God can't do miracles. Of course he can. But now, since we have the technology and a better understanding of the damage that's done to your cells and DNA, and there's probably no scientists out there that can argue with me on this, because trauma does do that. Now we know how to fix that. And so we need to move in that direction. So that's on the trauma issue and with parents and things like that. On the other thing, if I may address that, I'm not sure the specifics on the specifics of what the law enforcement officer that you spoke to said.
Well, he was involved with the group. Their group.
Is this a group we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I've met them one time, and based on what you relayed to me, let me give the best I can remember. Let me give you what's happening out there. Child sex trafficking is run by gangs. It is run by a criminal enterprise. It is run by the cartel. It is participated with the, that's the wrong word, excuse me. It is influenced by people in power at the highest levels. I can tell you what he can't tell you because he doesn't have access. And whatever he told you, he's wrong. The head of the snake is at one of the highest global levels in the world. I mean, we know who those people are. And there are people that I work with that know who they are. And the FBI knows who they are. And Pam Bondi knows who they are. And 47 knows who they are. And these are people that most of America knows who they are, that I'm not at liberty to disclose right now. But there were people that worked and now are retired, but they're not really retired. And they use child sex trafficking to launder money whether that's either through Pornhub or other institutions. They have thousands of cutouts to launder all this money through. They also use the same mechanism for drug trafficking and bringing terrorists into the country and weapons to actually move children all around the globe, whether it's for child sex trafficking or child pornography or organ harvesting. And I'm going to say this boldly. I've been in the trenches for 34 years, and I've heard a lot of crap out there from people that want to pontificate on what they know about trafficking, and they don't know squat. They may have touched the fringes of it, but unless they've been in the trenches with us, that's like trying to convince a warfighter that's been to Afghanistan that you know what the Taliban are about, and you never went to Afghanistan. It's nonsense. So I get a lot of this, and if I sound a little frustrated, I see a lot of people opening up organizations and NGOs and non-government organizations and going after big government grant money because there's no oversight, and they're making it into a business. So in my opinion, they are no different than the pimp or the person that enslaves a child. They're making money either way. On this side, you're making money through child pornography. On this side, you're making money to try to tell people that you are something that you're not. So interesting for our organization, being around for 34 years now, we get to go behind the veil. So there are not too many organizations in our country that I can't look behind the veil and see what they're really doing. And we do that because we want to maintain a good relationship with certain strategic partners, and we want to avoid others, to be honest with you. So, we didn't get started in art because we thought it was a cool thing to do. Look, I was going to retire as an old spy and open up a coffee company. Well, I do have a coffee company now called Highland Coffee Company, of course, but God made this whole thing happen. So God makes the decisions on where we go and who we go after. And so he spearheads that. So I will tell you this, if an organization is not God-driven, then it's worldly driven. And if it's worldly driven, then its motivations are going to be that of the world. And for people that have an organization that's God-driven, they can see behind it. I mean, they can see the foolishness of it right out the bat. Interesting enough, the people that are trying to fool everybody aren't really fooling everybody. So it's an interesting thing. And then finally, let me address this. As much as I would like to say over the course of 34 years that we are winning this war on child sex trafficking, we are not. It has grown exponentially. And we are not winning this war because of many reasons, actually, because there are people in positions of power that can continue to shift gears and take trafficking just like they did drugs and just like they do weapons in so many different directions. So you can't catch up with it sometimes.
Put it in kind of, can you walk me through what this looks like? I mean, the children that are the victims, and I know it's all ages, right? What is there a typical cartel type process? Is it, I know there's multi-layered, but for parents and people trying to relate to this in a sense of how can I protect my family or grandkids or whatever, what does it look like? I mean, let's take in any major metro in this country, because I know it happens all over the world. But surprisingly, didn't I read most of them are the victims are American? Did I see that somewhere?
Well, there are American victims. We have, and these numbers fluctuate all the
Yeah.
time. The last numbers I heard is we have 500,000 UACs, unaccompanied alien children. And then we had about 438,
500,000
500,000 missing,
in
still
this
missing.
country?
Yeah, I think
Unaccompanied?
Tom Homan said they've only rescued like 20,000 so far. So that was as of my trip to DC when I spoke at CPAC last month, I think. And then, of course, there was another 438,000 American children missing before that. But here's what's interesting about that. We don't really know what the real number is. We just know a lot are missing. And so we do our best to understand what the number is. But let me ask the audience this. What if it was just one child? We always use the wow
Absolutely.
factor. It's like, my gosh, 438,000 American children. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, what if it was just one American child? Would you care as much? And for us, that's the important thing. We define success one child at a time. So I think America has to care enough to do that. not because they think it's a cool thing to do, but because, and I will tell you, if you're in child sex trafficking rescue operations because you think it's cool, you're going to burn out really fast. If you don't do this because you're called to do it, when you're too tired, what's not so cool anymore, or no one's shaking your hand, you're just going to go away. And quite honestly, we don't want those type of people out here on the battlefield with us, to be honest with you. You know, it only took 3% of the American colonists to beat the British. It was on every colony, and everybody forgets that. And what everybody else forgets also is, yeah, we celebrate 1776 as our independence, but we fought the British for another 6 years. So what I'm saying is, right when you think you got your hand on it, for example, it's true the Biden administration was not any help, and we can go into that whole thing here in a minute if you want. And 47's administration is helpful, but even though 47, President Trump, is a huge backer of anti-child sex trafficking, we've still got more battles to fight. We're actually just fighting the war now on just saving the republic in addition to everything else that we're trying to do. So to answer your question, and I segued a little bit there, it can be, if you think of any commodity, and this is the best way to teach the audience. Let's say I'm selling soap. Okay, everybody uses soap, right? Let me back up a little bit. Let me. There's a caveat. Number one, we're an over-sexualized society, so that doesn't really help. So much to the point that you've got people like the LGBTQ, XYZ, whatever they want to be next month, trying to get pedophiles categorized as minor attracted people, which is basically legalizing pedophilia. So that doesn't mean I hate all gay people, but I'll tell you what, that organization in itself that pushes that agenda, they're no friend of mine, and they're no friend of children. And America needs to understand that. You know, leopard, doesn't change its spots. And so they're always out there backing anything from Antifa to BLM to minor attracted persons. So they fall into the wicked category for us. So we don't spend a lot of energy, trying to fight that battle. But child sex trafficking is like, let's say it's like a bar of soap. And so let's say we all could just get Ivory soap. That's it. But we wanted the special soap, whatever you want to call it. We'll just call it special soap. But nobody could get special soap. And then one day someone says, hey, I can get you special soap. Nobody else can get special soap, supply and demand, but I can get it to you for this right here. And so someone goes and gets special soap. Maybe it's on the black market. Maybe it's a place that we never know because they're collecting special soap. And then you get special soap or somebody else gets the special soap. Not everybody. Everybody else is just using regular old Ivory soap. So it's a commodity, all right? And when you want something that you can't have, you'll pay more money for it, generally speaking. So when it comes to our cultural structure, so to speak, all of those people that want to abuse children, those children are special soap, all right? And they use it as a commodity. They use the same logistical mechanism to get special soap. So you can't get it in the United States, so where do you go? You go to another country. Okay, let's use Mexico. Cartel shows up and says, I can get you special soap. Wow, now you start dealing with the cartel. And in addition to that, you tell the cartel, you know what? I don't know if I can get the special soap across the border. The cartel says, don't worry about it. I've got a senator in Washington, and I've got somebody in the truckers union in Chicago, and I've got somebody else in customs at the Border Patrol, and they're on my payroll, so I can get the special soap to you. Now, I'm paying the senator, and I'm paying someone in the union, and I'm paying somebody on the Border Patrol also to get the special soap to you. Now you're dealing with the cartel. And so what most people don't understand, we hear this word used a lot, the cartel is global, and it has more money than most governments. So it's a battle uphill for that. So what they do over the course of time, no matter what the product is, whether it's special soap or it's children or it's fentanyl or it's guns or whatever it may be, what they're doing is they have already put their people in place so they can ship the special soap into whoever wants it. And so if you're asking, are your children a target? Yes, because I will tell you what, the sale of children and enslaving children and child sex trafficking in the United States, particularly since we are the largest buyers of child sex and child sex pornography than any other nation that we know in the world,
Oh, that's so horrible.
Supply and demand again. Yeah, it's pretty bad. People are going to figure out a way to get a hold of all of that. And the people that know how to move those products and have moved all those for a long time, and this is common sense. I mean, if we say the cartel, whether it's CJ&G or Sinaloa or the Achapitos or whoever it may be, they're in a business. And part of their business structure is to move commodities quietly from one country to the next. And they're the pros at it. But that's what they make sure that they have people in place that can help them traffic or move all of those commodities, so to speak. So in America, because there's such a demand for children, whether that's a satanic cult for rituals or whether that's child pornography or whatever it may be, when it comes to the abuse of children, there is such a demand here that the product is being produced. So interesting enough, if we talk about that product and how we needed more of that product here so people could exchange currency and make money by laundering through multiple banks. When the Biden administration was in charge, Biden and Harris and Mayorkas and all those people, all of those children that came across, most all of the children that came across the border were escorted there by members of the cartel or a cartel. Mm-hmm. Biden and them knew that.
Well, we live, I don't know if you know, we're in South Texas, okay? So the cartels are very real here and always have been. And we lived the border every day. I think the rest of the country had limited doses of what was going on all those years during the Biden administration. But we lived it here in Texas every single day. So what you're saying is ringing true on many fronts based on the information that we were able to get here on the ground.
Yeah, exactly right. We've worked the border. We still continue to work the border. And so it is very real. Most of America never knew about the war going on in the border that Texas had to pay attention to every year, whether it was the 3 sheriffs in a local town in West Texas or wherever it may be, whether it's all of a sudden a member of the cartel or a gang now has a 50 caliber machine gun on the back of their truck, and the sheriff's department is getting outgunned. They never saw that. And so it was ridiculous when Mayorkas and all of them tried to say, we don't have a border problem. Now, we were the first team on the ground. And this will give you an idea of the level of corruption. We were the first team on the ground in Chattanooga, Tennessee, when the night flights were coming in at 2:00 in the morning on an airline that had been bankrupt 5 years earlier, was resurrected. The major shareholders are BlackRock and Vanguard, bringing children in, undocumented children, alien children, at 2:00 in the morning, putting them on buses and taking them off to non-disclosed locations and dropping them off to people, not family, no reunification center. I sent a report up to ICE. 2 weeks later, ICE, my contacts on ICE wrote back and said, this is being done by the Biden administration. They've told us hands off. In addition to that, I have the governor of Tennessee going, I didn't know anything about that. In addition to that, I have the owners of Wilson Airfield going, we didn't know anything about this. It was all a lie. I had Tennessee Bureau of Investigation telling me it's on the up and up. So what was on the up and up? The trafficking of children? Congress didn't vote on that. Where did these children go? No one seems to know. So this administration is guilty of child sex trafficking more than any time in the history of our country. Now, if you and I, Tanji, were to have done that same thing, we'd be in prison. So America needs to ask for accountability. Why isn't Biden in prison? Why isn't Harris in prison? Why isn't the Democratic Party and anybody else on both sides of the aisle that supported the open border, why aren't they in prison? Because I'll tell you what, if I was at your house and I had a vicious dog outside your door and I opened that door and that dog came in and mauled you to death, I'm complicit in that crime by opening the door. So I say this to every American right now. If you have a family member that gets attacked by an illegal alien or an illegal pedophile that's an alien, and you bring charges against them, you need to go to the White House or you need to go to Washington, D.C. and bring charges against every senator that supported that open border policy because they are complicit in this crime. And I'm adamant about that. we're trying to drum up enough signatures on a petition that hopefully can go as a legislative tube that says it's the Congressional Accountability Act, and that's what it says. If your child is, murdered or raped by an illegal alien, you have the right to, of course, go after that illegal alien, but you also have the right to bring charges against any senator or congressman that supported that open border policy because they're complicit in that. Now, I don't know how far I'll get. I was in Washington and I was told by lobbyists, don't say anything about that. And God said, say something about it. So I did. But it's the right thing to do. I am sick and tired, even with that issue of unaccompanied minors. We're talking about the care of UACs and finding them, but nobody in the Senate is talking about accountability. And that's the way it is. They want it to just blow over. And if they blow over 2 generations from now, nobody will really care. But I tell you what, the American people have got to be sick and tired of that no accountability issue that we deal with so often. We have had people in Washington, and I have a lot of good contacts in Washington. It's not everybody, but we have people that make decisions for the American people, and we're left holding the bag. And they never have to pay for it. We do. We suffer for it, like you do, guys do in Texas, when all the drugs keep coming through and all that stuff. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And don't you think too, though, there's so much money spread around in the process, and you can use the word complicit, but it has different levels of intensity. And sometimes for some folks, it's probably easier to take the money and look the other way, as wrong as that is. But I would imagine there was a lot of that going around too. I mean, if there's enough money floating around, people without a lot of the integrity caliber are going to be okay with just looking the other way and brushing it under the rug and moving on. But it's
Yeah.
not gone away. I mean, that administration's gone, but this problem is certainly not.
The problem has not. Just recently, we had MVM and Catholic Charities who received millions of dollars from the Biden administration to distribute children all over this country and, by the way, into the Ukraine. How bizarre is that? Wait a minute. I'm running operations in the Ukraine to get children out of the war zone, and they're shipping children back into the Ukraine. And people go, well, what could that be? Well, how about this? What if you have it on good intelligence that Fauci is still over in the Ukraine and there's 28 other bio labs there? What would you need children for? Well, you need them as lab rats. That's what you need them for. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm asking the question. So you
But
are
you have no
exactly
proof
right,
of that. I
Tanji.
mean,
It
these are
hasn't gone away.
suppositions.
What's that?
I said you have no hard evidence of that. This is simply
Yeah, I do. I actually do have
You
hard
do?
evidence. Yeah, we actually do have hard evidence of that. And having this administration look at that is challenging. And I'll tell you why it's challenging. The FBI, the CIA, all the 3-letter agencies are right in a blistering battle to clean up corruption inside. At the top of the CIA, the 7th floor, the Obama, the Brennan, the Clinton associates that hated 47 are still there. And I've talked to retired CIA officers going, man, we're so messed up here. It's incredible. So you've got to clean all that up. And so that's the battle on top of running government. And so can you successfully do your job? Let's say the FBI. Can you successfully do your job as long as you've got people inside your ranks that are always sabotaging stuff? No, you can't. Oh, you may publish a little something. We did this and we did this little thing, but they're just buying time. And we've been trying to tell them that we have it on we have great intel and great information that Obama and Clinton and globalists that are still trying to destroy the Constitution are just buying time for Trump to finish his term. They're giving 47 what they want 47 to know. Giving 47 more valuable information like, here's your enemies that are in your inner circle. Or to Tulsi Gabbard go, look, if you want to quit looking over your shoulder, then you need a different circle of friends that can maintain your standards, can give you the right information, whether it's child sex trafficking or it's corruption at all these levels. Until they do that, and they're not willing to do that yet. It could be because
not willing, and maybe it's when you've got career folks in there, you've got so many layers. I mean, bureaucracies in and of themselves
Mhm.
are that way. And I would imagine it's hard to know. There may be some obvious ones to weed out, but folks who are into that kind of world and lifestyle with different agendas are usually pretty good manipulators uh, and operators. Do you know what I'm saying? So it may be tough to understand which ones to get out. I would imagine.
Well, it's not actually, and from your point, but if you come out of the clandestine service, as I did, and you float around with a lot of former agency officers or the intelligence community that still has access to a lot of things. Just because you get out doesn't mean you've lost your access to a number of things. You get some ground truth, what's really going on. Now, what we're dealing with in the administration now is about three things, in my opinion. One, there's ego. People want their job, but they don't want to do their job. Number two, they're overwhelmed. 47 hired on loyalty this time. He didn't hire on experience. And that's probably the right thing to do. I think he's a great strategist, to be honest with you. So then you've got that problem. You've got ego. Maybe people are overwhelmed. And also what you deal with at every level, and I'm going to boldly say it, from the vice president down, they want the American people to hear their narrative. So if something isn't aligned up with what the narrative is, it could be the best intel in the world on who's trafficking children and what terrorists came across the border and all that. And they're not going to do it because they have their own agenda.
The major media are probably pretty done in terms of, for many Americans, finding their information from there, because you do sometimes feel like it's spoon-fed information and very selected and sometimes even manipulated facts.
Yeah. Well, most people know me. Look, I have nothing to gain by saying what I'm saying, and so I'll put it in better context. Yeah, the vaccine was a conspiracy too, and guess what? Not a conspiracy anymore. The Russiagate was conspiracy thinking by the Democratic against Mike Flynn and all of that, and that was not a conspiracy. So people like to lean into that to kind of disqualify whatever you're saying. Now, does it mean there aren't a lot of people up there I've seen everything out there like, oh, aliens did it, and I get that. But I'm going to tell you this. There is a select group of people, and the people that know and need to know, understand this. There are people that have access to solid intelligence. And out of respect for 47, that information has been sent up to him. So what he chooses to do with that is going to be up to him. We're not going to circumvent his strategies or his process. I'm just saying, as using that as an example right now, look at the incremental tactics that are usually involved with things like this. And you're exactly right. If you can buy enough time to get people distracted and involved in other things, and a couple other generations come along, they won't care. For example, if I were to tell everybody, hey, these are the people that assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Now, some of us would go, wow. But the majority of the generations would go, well, it wasn't during my time. It doesn't affect me right now. It's called incremental tactics. And what it does is diffuses the issue so that you can go on to do other things. Now, the question has to be asked, why are you diffusing the issue? Is it because you're not brave enough to address the people that really did it? Is it that you have another agenda? Most of the time, it's because they have another agenda. So I'm just saying that it's very difficult now to fool a very sophisticated audience, the American people. What I'm saying is I think the American public cannot let this rest. They have to demand accountability. And nobody's buying the narrative right now. It doesn't make sense to anybody, and nobody wants to. So, excuse me. So I think and to prevent people in my circle from getting frustrated, we just have gotten to the point where we just go, well, all right, we'll say what we can say. And then one day people go, oh my gosh, you were right. I mean, I had this just yesterday. I told a guy something about 10 years ago, how the country was evolving. And he's always writing, going, you were right about that. Oh my gosh, you were right about that. Oh my gosh. And that other thing, you were right about that too. So it's not that I'm trying to be right. It's just that I love the Republic and I love the American people. And I'm just as tired of being lied to by any bureaucracy.
I think we all are. And I think Elon Musk deserves a big shout out for opening up Twitter. I mean, or X, at least now there is a more open um, for him in terms of the censorship is not like what it was. Although the move right now um, is it's certainly trying to make a big comeback. Look at what's going on in Europe and Great Britain and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think more than ever we do have to speak up, and I commend you for standing by your truths. And I'm curious. Is the things you just talked about, all the bureaucracy and bad actors and whatnot going on, um, I'll call it the deep state. Some people hate that term, but is that why you got out?
Got out of the CIA, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I got out when 93 when we rescued those kids. Well, let me back up. Had seen that before. I was on an operation one time. We were 24 hours out from attacking um, um, a facility during a certain war in another country with a group of guerrillas that were fighting for democracy during the Reagan days. And 24 hours before we were supposed to um, attack a refinery that was supporting the Russians, um, the 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 operation got aborted. And I asked a really good friend of mine. He's out now, but he had a long history. And I said, "Hey, I don't get it. What's up?" And he goes, "It was a Chevron facility." And I went, "Wait a minute, I'm confused." And I was young. I said, "Wait, a Chevron that's aligned with the United States, and they're providing the fuel for the Russians and the Cubans to go up against the good guys?" And he goes, "You have a lot to learn." So that was my first taste of corruption and bureaucracy and behind door handshakes and stuff like that. But that's not why I got out. From 93, when I helped rescue those two little girls, I went on from 93 to 96 to continue to rescue kids on my own, unbeknownst to the CIA at that time, during my holidays, Christmas,
While you were
Thanksgiving.
still employed?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I was driven to do it. And so, if you keep doing something and you kind of got God's fingerprints all over, or you're successful doing it, it's like, oh, this is a good thing. And so all of a sudden there was something bigger than overthrowing small governments for me. And so in 1996, I jumped ship and started running ARC full time. So, and I don't even look back now. I think I'm blessed, and I understand why I had that time in the agency to understand all the trade crap and then the clandestine service, because it is how we apply ourselves now when it comes to rescuing children. And so God had a reason for having me there. But now when I look back, I tell people all the time. Once you rescue your first kid, you're never the same. So it's simply stated, if we do not, Tanji, then who will? Because most of the people in America are always expecting somebody else to do it. Our Constitution says what? We the people. It's not we the government. It's not we the police officers. It's not we the fire department. Put out your own fire if you have to. You know what? It's we the people. And this is our community and our country. And these children are in your community and they're in our country. And you do not need permission from the government or from law enforcement or from anybody else, any mayor, to go save a life of a child who's an American, because they are part of we the people. So getting people empowered to take their rightful place as American citizens, no different than our founding fathers did, and sacrificing everything to save the future of the country, which means saving children, in my opinion, to some degree. I think that we have to get a hold of that again.
No, absolutely. I've heard you talk. I've seen other podcasts you've done, and you do give speeches across the country as well. And you made a comment that kind of stuck out with me, that you thought God, the plan for your life, and you said you were focused on the plan for my life, and it hit you that, no, wait a minute, I'm in his plan. You know what I'm saying? That your perspective shifted.
Yeah, it did. I grew up like most war fighters, thinking, God's got a special plan for my life. I know I'm just gonna figure out what it is, And so you go through all these years doing A, B, and C, and trying to figure out what your plan, your special purpose is, and your plan is. And then one day I just realized, after rescuing a lot of kids, that God didn't have a special plan for my life. He lets me be a part of His big plan.
That's
And
exactly
and what
right.
happens is, when you think of it that way, you get yourself out of the way, because now we're following the commander in chief, his plan. for whatever that plan is, it's just like, God, just let me fit in. Every morning when you wake up, where do you want me to fit into your plan? And his plan is pretty much written out in the scriptures. We know that. But when you're having those one-on-one conversations with him, I think you have to do everything you can to get yourself out of the way to think me, I. We tell people this all the time about children. It's not about you. It's about them. And if you're here because you're trying to fulfill something, or you want to be cool, or you just are lost in life, or you're going through midlife crisis, whatever, this is not the place for you to be, because trafficking doesn't stop on Saturdays and Sundays. It's just 24/7. It consumes your life. What are you going to do on Sunday when you get a call at 2:00 in the morning? Somebody goes, I got a 12-year-old who just ran for their pimp and they're standing on the corner of Figueroa. You're going to go, well, I'll just take it. I'm sleeping right now. This is my break. I have compassion fatigue. I'll do it the next day. No, the kid will be gone, or the kid will be dead. And so this can never be about us.
Well, and your wife is with you in this endeavor as well, right? She's on
She
board
is,
with
yeah.
Art
She's
as
my
well.
director of human trafficking. And she came on board with us about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
She was actually in the streets rescuing children on her own. And so she has, literally, she was the type of person that, and I joke about this a little bit, but it's kind of true. She's the kind of person that would go into a neighborhood with MS-13 and walk up to somebody and go, you're going to let me have that 11-year-old that you're trafficking, or God's going to burn your house down. That kind of thing, like fire
Yeah.
from heaven
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I thought, wow, that's pretty
You
bold.
two are probably
So,
a good match.
well, yeah, sometimes we are, and she's pretty strong-minded, and she's good at what she does. I have to say, on the trafficking front, I haven't seen many people that can uh, stand up to her, and she's got a lot of experience,
Yeah.
and she's perfect as a director of human trafficking, and she's a lot more intelligent than I am. I'm just a warfighter that goes downrange and strands in the trenches. Like, I can't tell you how to fix a computer. I can't tell you how to. There's a lot I can't tell you about. So
Those
I'm
things don't
blessed
really
to
matter,
have somebody that
Boswell, in
can
the
do
big
all that stuff. So it's
those don't
interesting.
matter in the big picture. Where there are some beautiful souls. I was first introduced to this topic through one of our TV show sponsors, and that was Goya Foods. And when Bob Unanaway was running Goya, and when he had the nonprofit that no longer exists anymore called Goya Cares, he produced Sound of Freedom, which I think that movie brought a lot of attention um, to the topic of child trafficking. And then the first time ever, I think, was with Laura Logan. She did a piece in Mexico. I don't know if you recall this. I know she's on your board, if I'm not mistaken, in some degree. She did a piece where she was in some town controlled by a cartel in Mexico and interviewed two girls. One was maybe 18 and the other maybe 21, in that age range. And she sent me the file of that. I wanted to see the whole interview, and I've never witnessed anything so gut wrenching when Laura asked them, "Who sold you?" And it was their mother. And yet, both of them, you would think if your mother did that to you, it would sever any tie you have emotionally. But it was tough. It's like, it's hard to comprehend. And i- that piece, anyway, has always stood out in my mind. And that was probably 10 years ago. It was a long time ago. Um, but speaks to the point this is going on, and it's only getting bigger. You've done the big deep rescues, the big intricate extractions and whatnot. Is it really for parents? I don't know if you speak to many parents groups. I know you handle the efforts to get the kids back. Is it something really they need to be top of mind of? I've heard people I would think the children's access to social media through those phones is a direct line to trouble. It can be in many
Yeah.
cases, especially in single parent homes, or homes where, I don't want to beat up on single parents. That's hard enough. But homes where there's not a lot of oversight.
Yeah, kids are either running to something or they're running away from something most of the time. And the thought of a parent selling a child was one at one time was just something that was just bone
Yeah.
crushing for me. And now over the years now, seeing more and more of that taking place.
In this
I've
country too.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yeah, and overseas,
Mhm.
but even in the U.S. So um, it's become a reality that I have to face every single day that we're running operations. It
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me anymore. It still hurts my heart that somebody would do this because once children are trafficked, what happens is the predator or the pimp or whoever or the perpetrator, one of the things they do is they take that identity away. And now whatever identity they want that child to be, like now you're the slave or you're the prostitute or you're, whatever it may be. I mean, we had a girl uh, that she was 21 years old and she was telling me that she was born to be a slave because her handler was a youth pastor at a church, female youth pastor who she read her scriptures in the Old Testament about slavery and said, "This is what you were meant to be." And
Oh
so
my.
she believed, and that girl was actually sold by her parents when she was 7 years old. So yeah, it's pretty eye opening. And yes, it does take place. Um, because also we live in a society where the value of life has been so diminished with getting abortions and there's no
Yeah.
value to life. So if you get a parent that has that same kind of mindset or is influenced by that and they would rather have money instead of taking care of their child, that's what you're going to get. They'll sell their child to, whether it's to feed a drug habit or whether it's to make more money or whatever it may be here in the United States. But we do see it in a lot of communities. So what's really funny about that, Tangi, is that when we were going through this whole thing with the Biden administration and BLM and Antifa and all that stuff, and everybody was screaming, you know, um, racism and slavery and all this. It's like I would get out there and talk to people. I go, we have more slavery now than we've ever had in our country before. And guess what? It's in some of your communities. Like in black communities, they enslave black kids. In white communities, they enslave white kids. I mean, it's there's no color, no race. It's being done all over the United States. The black community, and this comes from good sourcing, um, you know, handles a lot of the prostitution and trafficking, and the white community are most of the buyers in America. We see that over 34 years. That doesn't, and obviously you have to decide what's black and what's white, so to speak. But what I try to tell people is in order to help fix this problem with our children and understand about children is to put your racism aside and realize this. There are no African Americans in this country. Most Black Americans have never been to Africa. There are no Irish Americans in this country. Most people couldn't tell you what a leprechaun looks like to begin with, right? There are no Asian Americans in our country. Most have never been to Asia. They're just Americans.
Yeah.
And what I've learned after being in the trenches that is that there is a great division every time we refer to somebody as an Indian American or an African American or an Irish American or whatever it may be, or an Arab American. That's like going to training camp for the Dallas Cowboys and walking up going, "Hey, guess what? I'm a 49er Dallas Cowboy guy." They're not going to let you on the field. What are you? Where's your allegiance, right? So I tell people this in America, and I think guys like Charlie Kirk would agree with me on this, is that when you're in the trenches, what I've noticed is that all my comrades, they all bleed the same color. That's it. I
Yeah.
don't care if their skin is black, yellow, white, purple, whatever it may be. We're just Americans. And for the military, a lot of times we have that advantage of working together and understanding that. So when you get all this baloney in America. People are just trying to stir up and divide our country.
Mhm.
That's when you start hearing things like this. The
Don't you
African
think that's
American
what's at the
community,
root of it? It's division.
it is division. It is division.
Yeah.
And what happens is,
Cold.
and here's another thing too, it's people that are uneducated. And now, look, people ask me, they say, do you discriminate against people? And I go, I absolutely do. I have one group of people I discriminate against: lazy people. Lazy people. You know what? I don't care what color you are. If you're lazy, you don't do your research, you don't do your work, you don't want to work for your money and feed your children and do the hard labor, and you just want a handout and you want welfare. then I don't have any room for you in my life. Look, my grandfather came to this country in 1914. And he married a Native American woman, and they had 12 kids, and he worked 3 jobs. And they grew up during the Depression and all the world wars and all that kind of stuff. So, and he was the only kind of red, brown skinned guy in an all black American neighborhood. But I'm going to tell you something. I grew up around that. Mrs. Till was a Black American, and she delivered all of my aunts and uncles. So I grew up seeing people as just people and good, hard Americans. And everybody in that community loved this country. They loved the Constitution, and I never once remember them even talking about racism or it didn't matter. And we've strayed away from that in our country. And if there was one thing that I see that we could help unify ourselves, and that would be start looking at your sense of nationalism. You're an American, and we serve the Constitution, and we love the Constitution, and we're a Judeo-Christian community. Fall into those things that the woke liberal side are trying to get rid of, because I'll tell you what, if you're in the younger generation and you're listening to this and you think socialism and communism and globalism is a good thing, I got a deal for you. I will pay to send your little ass down to Venezuela right now and let you stay there for 3 months. And then you come back and you tell me how great communism, socialism, globalism really is. Really,
Yeah.
seriously.
Well,
And I'll
I
do
would
it.
say, look what's happening in New York. This will be interesting to see where Mandami goes because to me, it is mind blowing that a city like New York, I mean, this is like the beacon of capitalism in this country.
Well, and look, I know a little bit about Islam because my grandfather, before he became a Christian, was a Muslim. So I think I
Really?
can, yeah, I think I can speak to this. He came out of Beirut,
Yeah.
Lebanon. And, and so I can tell you the things he told me about Islam. And he used to compare Islam to socialism. You know, he also compared it, believe it or not, to the early Catholic Church where no one could read the Bible. So Catholicism kind of took things over and controlled the people, and it became kind of a socialist system within itself, within the church. So when people started developing a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and the Lord, they all of a sudden realized that they only serve one God. That's it. They don't serve the Pope. You don't serve, you know, Allah. You don't serve the Quran. And more, and if you ever get the chance to talk to some former Islamic radical guys that became Christians, it's eye-opening how they
Yeah.
basically will go, man, this ranks right up there with what the Soviet Union used to be. The same control over the people. I don't have any freedom. And of course the Quran falls apart. We know that. And I'm not trying to piss Islamics off, but just do your study. You'll see. It just falls apart. And this is coming
Jesus'
from
grave
other
is empty and
Islamics.
accessible. So,
What's that?
as a Jesus grave is empty and accessible.
That's right. That's right. So, when we talk things like this, it actually comes from a very compassionate heart, on the spiritual level of wanting people to live a life and that's fulfilled with a God that has greater promises than anything else you can have, who loves you. And this doesn't come from the word of Christians. This is God's word. This is God's word. It's not our word. So if you and most of my friends who now were Islamic and now are Christians look at me and they go, you know what? You shared the gospel with me because I see you love me. You really do, because I was headed in a bad direction. And it's like, I have nothing to gain from it. It's like, yeah, it's because I love you, brother. It's it. Just like my grandfather, I'll never forget this. There is a difference between, we were talking about divine intervention. And I remember my grandfather, who was a devout Muslim. My grandmother had passed along. She was Native American Waccamaw, and she was brought up in the Catholic Church, and then actually got into the Pentecostal church, and which used to infuriate my grandfather, from what I understand. So, um, but what's interesting is somewhere in his life after she passed away, and he was living alone, basically with his 2 dogs and his garden and stuff. He had a personal encounter with Jesus Christ. And then my grandfather was a man of conviction. This is a guy who carried a gun with him all over the place. And if you were his friend, you were his friend for life. And if you were his enemy, man, he cut your hand off kind of guy. That's just the way he was raised. And I was 2 weeks out before I was graduating from the Citadel, and I went down to Georgetown to spend the weekend with him, and we had a great time. And as I was leaving, he called out to me. My middle name is Hassan. And he said, Hassan. And I said, yeah, Granddad. I was going out the door, and he said, you know this thing that your grandmother spoke of? And his English, he still spoke broken English. And I said, no, Granddad. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, this thing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I said, yes, sir. He goes, it is true.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
it. And after that, I knew that my ancestors had realized that, my grandfather, and I had put my faith and my trust in a grandfather and a father that had nothing but my best interests at hand. And I also, it strengthened my convictions, and it forced me to go back into the scriptures and actually say, wait a minute, what do I really believe? And so after that, and 69 years later of continuing to study in the Word and find the ties between us and our founding fathers and our nation and how blessed we are, there is nobody on this earth that can convince me that we are not founded on Judeo-Christian principles in this country.
Yeah,
Everything
I
leads to
agree.
it. But everybody tries to go, well, separation of church and state. I think you need to go study your history, because there were more pastors involved in forming this country than
Yeah.
there ever were politicians. They both have a P, pastors and politicians. Pastors are pretty solid most of the time, and politicians, I don't have a lot of room for them.
I
I'm not a guy
totally
that likes,
agree.
yeah,
Basil,
compromise and negotiations is not my thing.
I was a journalist for years in the news world, and I always tell people, and I've probably offended a few along the way, because my two least favorite people were politicians and lawyers.
Yeah,
They always had an agenda, and they were always trying to spin, in many cases. But yeah, I think the politician word, and there are some good ones, but I think really it's about not depending on that and really taking charge of our own destiny in life. And I don't know, I maybe it's my age. You and I are very close in age, and I'm kind of to a point where the only thing that really matters is up there,
yeah, it will be.
and
Yeah,
a lot
it
of the
is.
things that we get caught up in aren't so big a deal, and aren't so important as God's plan. And you said something too I enjoyed and really agree with, is it's about the relationship. God just wants a relationship with us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I
and
learned that
then
from my father. You're so right, Tanji. I remember when I was a young boy, and I wasn't even tall enough to look over the hood of the car. My dad would be working in the car, and I just stand there because I just want to be with him. And
yeah,
he'd drop a screwdriver every now and then on purpose and go, "Oh, can you help me? Can you grab that?" And again, I could barely get it up to him. I was probably 6 or 7 or something. And he was building a relationship with me, and I realized that that's what God wants with us also. He doesn't want legalistic relationships. He just wants a loving relationship. I think we all have people that in our lives that come to us when they always want something. And for example, we in the faith-based community, every time we go to church, we're always praying and asking God for stuff. And I think God probably says, wait, I don't have wax in my ear. You asked me that 100 times. The Bible says God knows our heart. He knows the desires of our hearts. If he knows the desires of our heart, and we just keep asking and asking and asking, what are we asking for? So I look at that and I say, wait a minute, maybe God just wants me to be still and know that he's God, because the most powerful relationships with the Father have always been that we saw with David and Gideon and all those, where they just sat in the presence of God.
mhm,
And instead of asking somebody, and I will tell you, if you have those friends that only come to you when they want something, they're not really your friends, and after a while you
not
tire them.
friends.
But what about the person that just shows up all the time?
Yeah,
And you go, "Can I help you?" And they go, "No, I just wanna be here. Just wanna be here. I just wanna learn from you. I just want." Those are the people that stay in our life. They never ask something, and they're also the people that when we have something to give, we don't mind giving it to them because they're so humble and they're not selfish. So that I believe, and according to the scriptures, is the relationship that God wants with us. I think if most Christians we're just so impatient. But if we would just find some quiet time to just go sit with
Yeah.
God and not asking for anything, I think all things would come to us, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I enjoy, I find that outdoors, just sitting outdoors and observing, it's such an amazing world.
Yeah, God's done a good
Nature,
job.
the things that happen, just the silly bugs walking around in the dirt, they're all incredible, incredible creations. I hope you'll come back on because I'd love to talk more, and keep up with your group. I wanted to ask you how we can help art because art it's the what is it? The Association for the Recovery of Children.
Hmm.
Um, you guys don't charge the families that you work for to rescue children,
Yeah.
and you have a pretty darn good success rate as well.
Yeah, yeah. We don't charge for our services. It's all everybody that works for ARC is all volunteer. I require them to go do something else to pay their bills. Like I write some books or I do some speaking or whatever. That's because that's the way God set it up. And maybe one day he'll change it. Maybe there'll be time for salaries. There hasn't been so far for 34 years. I understand God's design with that because I've had people come and go, "Hey, how much can you pay me to if I work for ARC?" And I go, "We can't pay you anything." And they're like, "Well, I don't want to do it." Versus the guys or the girls that come to us and go, I don't want a paycheck. I just want to go save kids. So those are the people that we want, the people that their heart is into it. But we have never, the custodial guardians are under so much pressure already. And early on, when I was starting ARC up, I saw so many people get taken advantage of. I would see former spec ops guys charge 70, and I remember one specific case, they charged $73,000 and they just disappeared. And I got to tell you, that's like burning in hell kind of stuff, when you do
Yeah,
that. I don't think God smiles
absolutely.
on that. So we don't. Um, and we're blessed we have a 100% success rate and that every kid we've gone after since 93,
100%.
yeah, every kid we've gone after since 93, we've brought home. So, and there are some exceptions. There's some, when I say we brought them home, there were some that were found that weren't alive. They still came home, but not the way we would have wanted them to come home. So this is not a business. And look, I certainly understand those NGOs that get grant money, and I understand they run their business and they have to feed their children, and I get that. And I don't, I don't cut them down at the knees because of that. It's just not how we do art.
Yeah.
And I've never found the right model, to be honest with you. Maybe one day some billionaire will walk up and go, "Hey, I want you guys to be free of all your other commitments and do this 24/7." And maybe I'll pray about it, and maybe, as long as there's some good oversight, every single penny has to go to the rescue of a child. And that money is God's money. It's not our money. And I think we have to be very, very careful for that. Like you alluded to, when we leave this earth, we're not taking anything with us. I
Yeah.
just buried my dad 3 months ago, and
Oh,
as
I'm
I had him
sorry.
in his uniform and stuff, and all the things that we shared together, and all of his flying career, and here's my hero that I'm sending off to heaven. And I looked and I thought, that coffin's only so big. You can't take anything with you. And as
Yeah.
a son and a warfighter, I wanted to load it up with, Dad, here's all your guns, and here's the sword, and here's the, and it just wouldn't be any room for it. And I think Dad's probably smiling at me now, going, "Yeah, that would be a little crowded in my coffin."
Yeah. Don't
But
need it up your son.
yeah, but we don't take any of it with us. And when it's
Okay.
our time, no man knows of that. Maybe we're blessed and God gives us more life to go get more kids and stuff like that. But all this stuff has to be dedicated to the cause, so to speak. And historically speaking, in our country too, Tangi, that's, for people that don't understand this when they study their history, our founding fathers gave everything. They lost plantations. They lost all their money. No, I don't know of any, and I could have missed something somewhere, but in all my studies, I don't know of any of our founding fathers that ended up being wealthy men at the end of the revolution. So if they can sacrifice that so that I have this freedom now, what am I willing to sacrifice so that other children can live in a free country and be, not attacked by predators or communists or socialists, and they can enjoy the sacrifice of my founding fathers and the sacrifice of my ancestors and all the veterans and all the people that the law enforcement and all the people that have given their lives so that people can be free, including our children, then that's what we have to do. That's our duty. And
Yeah.
I think if you go against the grain, I think you live a miserable life. There's nothing worse than if God allows you to be 90 years old, that you're sitting on your porch with all your money in your house and you go, yeah, but what did I contribute? What did I
Yeah.
do? I have all this. A lot of miserable people like that. I'm not that kind of guy.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Well, you all also you need folks to come work with you, right? I know you have active recruiting programs from time to time.
Yeah, we have strategic right now. We have strategic partners. At now, we've kind of uh, peeled off a little bit of our recruiting efforts. What we're trying to do now is force multiply and have a lot of good people, particularly ones that go through our 6-day equipping course, start their own organizations. We thought at first that bigger was better, but it's not. It's not about having all the people; it's about having the right people. So what we're trying to do is focus on having other people start their own NGOs, and we help them with that, and then they become strategic partners because most of them are already located in other parts of the country. So if we have an operation and we can't quite, we've got 5 operations, and I've got a sixth one that ends up on the front door, and it's in Kansas. We can call up that NGO and go, guys, here, can we turn this over to you? And that's far more effective, I believe. Plus, it's more compartmented, which helps with security as well.
Yeah.
And also, I don't have a big enough operations center to put the now 3,200, literally 3,200 resumes that I've collected over the last 30 years, in a building. I don't have it. So,
Yeah. So you found a model that works better. So I'll put up information for your group, but I guess the main thing that might be helpful right now is for people willing to contribute. I mean, you're a 501(c)(3), so I
we are,
assume.
yeah. Yeah. If you go to our page, recoveryofchildren.org or recoveryofchildren.com, there's a donate button there. Uh, we grace, I can't even get it out, but we're grateful. How's that? For any donations that come in. Uh, yeah, that's always the thing. It just, oddly enough, they don't give you free airline tickets to get your team to a location, or they don't give you free gas for your vehicles. So those are the things I can assure people this, and most of our strategic partners can attest to this, is that if you're out there doing your job and you're staying in a 5-star hotel, you're probably not doing your job. We're running surveillance from garbage dumps in the woods and stuff like that. And so, there are organizations out there, and I've monitored them, and they get people's money and there's no accountability. We have an accounting firm, which is great, Tashima and Company out of California. Ken Tashima and those guys are just pretty much open books. Anytime anybody wants to take a look and go, show us how that money was spent. And we have to do that with the IRS as well. So, we feel good about that.
Yeah. Well,
It's
you have a
great.
great track record. Was it 35, 36 years?
Just 34 years. Yeah, coming up
34
34 years.
years. That's a
Yeah, we're
long
very.
time.
It is a long time. I go through the files and look back at some of the operations, and I'm glad that God granted us this 34 years to learn to do things better. Isn't that we haven't made mistakes, and we don't know everything. We just know what we know over 34 years. And so we're always willing to help other NGOs who are getting into the fight, so to speak, so they don't, have to reinvent the wheel. The liability, if you can mitigate as much liability as possible, you generally are a little bit more successful. And so we share all that stuff with them.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you before I let you go, you've been so generous with your time. Anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about?
I can't think of anything right now, but, I'd love to get back on board with you guys again, and we can go through a bunch of other stuff. Let me look at my watch here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pull chalks because I have an
No
operational meeting I
worries.
have to go to. But God bless
No,
you
I think
guys.
we told you 30 minutes, and you were so great just to continue.
Well, that's
Uh,
okay, but God bless you guys, and we'll keep you in our prayers, and, thank you for the time to share this message and get the word out to the audience and stuff, and
well,
we look
it
forward
is
to.
our pleasure and our honor. Thank you so much for your service. You'll be in our prayers too.
Thank you so much, Tanji.
Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram